one of the biggest breaking stories that we're going to cover right away, if I may, and please join in again, share the show, like it out into the interwebs, is this whole thing about the abortion amendment that's going on in Florida. So the one in Florida has a 6-week limit on when you can have an abortion, and the only time it allows for one after that is rape, incest, or life of the mother. And I think it's just for the ones past that, it's just life of the mother, period. I think it allows like rape and incest for another like 6 weeks or something like that, because in some cases it might be a minor and other kinds of stuff like that. And then, of course, at the end, you know, the only way you can get one is if the woman's life is in danger. So the right wing is trying to reshape the fact that Trump, well, I'll show you. He shit the bed yesterday. And by the way, let me say this first. Hi, chat room. Hello. Hold on. Why am I should never let the green screen through. Never. It's a bad move. It just is. There we go. And it should be this camera, not the other. There you go. On this guy. So, which also should be, there we go. Yeah. And that guy. And, here we go. That's why that doesn't work. Boink. Yeah. Okay. I love fiddling with the live stream while I'm doing it. Hi, everybody. Hi, chat room. Look at you lovely folks there. Let me go publish that. There you go. And then back to live mode. Hi, chat room. So, as we look at what Trump said when he was being interviewed about his vote on this amendment, you need to know that the right wing, for all this, like Trump trying to sell this whole we're the common sense party, the reason he's doing that is to cover the fact that they are absolutely not. And that, you know, the limitations that right-wingers want to put on abortion across the country that they will never stop doing until there's a federal law that they can't undo. They will just continue to turn women into second-class citizens in half the states in the country or more, somewhere in the order of 30 of them, actually, as best they can. Trump knows this, knows it. He doesn't really give a shit, you know, about this particular issue. He's clearly paid for abortions himself in the past or had someone else do it for him, and doesn't care either way. But he knows he needs those votes to get from that particular group to get elected, from the you know, like the abortion absolutists, the anti-choice crowd, and he also, you know, in these one areas, I don't think he was prepared for how unpopular it was with the rank and file Republicans even. So let me show you real quick the two interviews that have gotten him into hot water with the very people that he needs on both sides of that issue. Okay, so this is this is on why are you in there, you silly thing? Yeah, there we go. This guy. On this particular scene, yeah, okay, that's right. This is, I forget who the woman's interviewing, but she's a local reporter at this event he was at. And I believe he was in Pennsylvania. He's been hitting it a lot because he's under the impression that he could win Pennsylvania. He's not going to win Pennsylvania. He might lose it by slightly less in theory, but it doesn't look like it. He just wants this idea that he thinks Pennsylvania was stolen from him last time, just like Georgia, and therefore he wants to fight for Pennsylvania because he wants you to think he was this close to winning it. And then when he loses it again, he's going to say it was stolen from him. So just to be clear. But let me see if this is loud enough.
You overturned Roe, and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's...
Hold on. Make sure.
And you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the sixth.
Also, he's nodding and going up until she says what's going on in Florida. He's nodding until she says it. I don't think he has any idea what she's going to ask him.
Week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor?
I want more weeks. Like, yeah, what am I? It's the best words. These are truly the best words.
Favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. Look, just so you understand, Everybody wanted Roe v. Wade terminated for years. 52.
Also, this is a weird lie. And I got to say, I think it's, again, something he's relating that someone else told him when they were trying to get him to push for this so that he could, and then obviously when the issue shit the bed, he's now trying to lay it off on other people. Everybody was telling me, we got to get rid of this thing.
2 years. I got it done. They wanted it to go back to the states.
No, they didn't. Seriously. The people that wanted it terminated didn't want it to go back to the states. They wanted it eliminated because they think the default in the states, they could fight on it cost them less money to fight state by state. But it wasn't because they thought the states should have the right to decide. It's because they thought they could overwhelm certain states with money and get it kicked out, or just, and as long as they could find something unconstitutional within the state constitutions, fight it on that level, that instituting a state law that allows for it again, they could stop it with just one vote in a lot of cases. They could filibuster on a state level or stop it with lawsuits and all kinds of injunctions, something that would be harder to do on a federal level. That was the people who are against the right to choose for women. Everybody else was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why should women have to choose what state they live in by what rights they want to have? And why should states be able to override the rights on a woman's body and not a man's? It's just ridiculous. I mean, unless you're a neo-Christic trad wife type.
Exceptions are very important for me, for Ronald Reagan, for others that have navigated this very, very interesting and difficult path.
Interesting and difficult. Okay, so the next part of it is he's also being interviewed here, and he tries, the new tack on it is going to be try to attack it as the end of this bill allows, the Florida bill allows you to kill a baby after it's been born, which it does not.
Voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida?
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, you know, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all.
By the way, notice how the guy from Fox News is just nodding when he says, you know, these other states have the right, you can execute a baby after birth. No state has that ability, not a single one. There is no court in this country that allows you to decide to kill your baby after it's born. Like like the fact that anybody even nods at it is nuts. The fact that they don't vehemently push back and go, well, obviously after the child is born, that would just be flat out murder, and that's not legal anywhere in any form. And then make him explain why like what's left of a non-viable fetus with no lungs, or it's it's holes in its skull and its brain exposed, and no, it's spine fused and stuff, that the minute you cut the umbilical cord it starts to suffocate, that forcing a woman to carry a fetus like that to term and then watch what's left of it pass away is cruel and unusual punishment. But somebody needs to make him explain what the hell that process is. For real. Not just past the, you set it aside when we make a decision, just like the governor said. It's not what he said. It's not how it goes. And they let him get those 3 sentences out and act as if it's real. Act as if that what he's saying isn't maniacally insane and just, quite frankly, it's defamatory bullshit. I think the one upside is it really lets you know what they think women are like. What do women do? What are the kind of decisions women make? Because that's his opinion about, left up to their own devices. That's what bitches would do, is essentially what you're hearing here.
That stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
Voting yes or...
Yeah. So again, he's trying to tack on that the Florida bill allows for you to murder a baby after it's born. So he'll be voting against it. The idea that if that was included, there's no way it gets the governor's signature. It's bizarre that it would even pass. Like, you know what I mean? I don't even know how you would get a bill on the Florida ballot that would allow for somebody to kill a baby after it's born. Like, what's the wording like that makes that a possibility? Because that's what they're trying to act like that's the reason he's going to vote against it. It's not because he thinks, you know, the 6-week thing, he'd actually be fine with that, really. It's because the bill also includes something where you can kill a baby after it's born, which it obviously fucking well does not. Okay, so J.D. Vance goes on CNN, and this is a constant, this is a constantly recurring issue. And I don't know how much they push back on this because I haven't watched this. But this is J.D. Vance basically running interference for Trump on this particular issue. So here you go.
Some confusion over former President Donald Trump's position on an amendment on the ballot in Florida that would effectively overturn the state's 6-week abortion ban. He is a Florida resident, and he was asked about this overnight.
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
So the campaign then put out a statement that said Trump has not yet said how he will vote on the ballot initiative in Florida. With me now is former President Trump's running mate, Republican Vice Presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Senator, great to have you with us. You can help us clear this up. How can you...
I got to say, I really don't think he can. And you can look at his face when he's about to be asked this question. This is not like, oh, great, I get to clean up another one of Donald's messes around the pro-life issue.
You vote for more than 6 weeks without voting for the amendment?
Well, I think all the president is saying, and of course he's going to make his own announcement on how he's going to vote on the Florida bill.
Because I have no idea what the ever-loving fuck he is talking about.
Is that he thinks that there should be more than 6 weeks. And he's been very consistent in that. He says he doesn't like just 6 weeks. He obviously doesn't like late-term abortion. I think like a lot of Americans, the president is sort of somewhere else on this issue.
Ooh, he was, did you notice he was starting to go towards in the middle on this issue? And he just said somewhere else. Can you tell me you don't know where the fucking runway is without telling me you don't know where the runway is?
And he's also said that he wants abortion policy to be made by the states themselves individually,
but not the people individually? How about that? How much smaller do the states get to be? Like maybe a state of being. Perhaps a woman in her aware state as a pregnant person might be, I don't know, a state in and of herself.
Not by the national government. I think that's the most important thing here.
By the way, what they want is the federal government, national government, the federal government making the decision for you. Choice allows you to make that choice. Them putting a ban on it from a federal level is them taking that choice away from you, and that's the federal government. Like, again, the rebranding on inverting this story, they're doing a terrible job. I'm not worried that they will actually do it, but I want to be abundantly clear. He's trying to make it so that if you vote for a woman's right to choose, like on a Roe v. Wade level, and there's a federal bill that does that, that's the government telling you what to do with your body. That's the federal government making the decision. And if Donald Trump were to pass a national ban, that's freedom. Yeah, I don't know what the, yeah.
Is that he's, of course, opining on this as a Florida resident, but when it comes to national policy, John, President Trump has been extremely consistent that he wants abortion policy to be made by the states. Florida, California.
That's not national policy then. And also, it's not a national policy. It's an abdication of national policy.
Ohio, they're going to have different approaches. That's okay. What he wants.
Is it, though? I mean, it's okay if you're him and you're you know, if you're on your third wife and you buried one of them on your golf course, or did you? Or if you're, you know, a venture capitalist posing as a hillbilly from Ohio, which makes no fucking sense, who has, you know, has been, you know, had to shop around for what effectively he believes to be a trad wife who will crank out kids for him, then yeah, then the decision's already made.
wants is to focus on eliminating inflation, bringing down the cost of groceries and housing, and closing down that southern border that Kamala Harris opened up. That's where.
Yeah, she didn't open it up. Title 42 opened it up. That created the industry that the cartels use to this day. And it's slowly dying because over time it's dwindling down. But
he's focused, and that's where we'll continue to focus for the remainder of the campaign.
Yeah, so don't ask me about that shit again.
He said he was going to vote for more than 6 weeks. So what's your understanding of how he will do that?
Well, I think what he's saying is that he doesn't like doing it at just 6 weeks. Obviously, he's going to make his own judgment on how he ultimately votes on the amendment. I think he's probably making an argument about how he feels about the issue. He's not making some proclamation about how he's going to vote on the amendment. And of course, they clarified afterwards that he wasn't making an explicit determination of how he's going to vote or announcing anything.
If you want more weeks, and whatever more weeks means, more than 6, and that thing has 6 weeks, that's a declaration of how you're going to vote, one would think.
Look, the president, I'm sure, will tell the American people how he's going to vote on it eventually.
Are you sure?
But he wasn't making an announcement last night.
There was a period in Donald Trump's life where he was not anti-abortion. Then he became anti-abortion, at one point suggesting that women should be punished if they have an abortion. Now he's saying he's for more than 6 weeks, but it's not clear how he's going to vote in an amendment in his own state. So that's why I think people are seeking clarity. You can understand that.
Well, John, the Dobbs decision, what it fundamentally did is this goes back to Democratic legislatures and the people, of course, who elect those legislatures. I think the president has said in a post-Roe, a post-Dobbs world, he wants voters to make these decisions. I think it's important to remember.
Oh, by the way, real quick. There are a bunch of people in the Heritage Foundation crowd and in the religious right that were around Donald Trump when all this shit came up. And Amy Coney Barrett got in there. And they were like, this is going to officially, we're going to get rid of Roe v. Wade, done, right? And it'll toss back to the states and we'll all outlaw it. And like you saw that with like the judge that outlawed it. And the idea is that that's where it would stop. And that legislation to restart a woman's ability to choose in any of these states would never frigging happen, right? They would have ways to block it, or they were under the impression that, especially in red states, there was enough of a wall against that any new legislation passing that would allow a woman to have the right to choose to keep it from passing. Right? They thought they had enough in place, and then in Ohio and Kansas and in other places, laws started showing up that voters turned out for that reinstated a woman's right to choose. This surprised the Vance side of this issue, the hyper anti-choice crowd. They were shocked by the fact that places like Kansas and Ohio, it's driving the vote, and it's driving it towards Democrats too. Like if a Democrat is on the ballot at the same time this is happening, the chances are they're going to pick. There's going to be an updraft from whatever legislation that happens, and there's a bunch of them that are on the bill this fall. So. But when they went through this process, the chances that there was going to have to be a national abortion ban were fairly slim in their minds. You wouldn't need the president to do it. It was enough that he would reject and get Roe v. Wade tossed out. He wouldn't have to do anything after that because they believed it would go a different way. They thought a bunch of states, New York, California, they're going to have them. There's nothing we can do about it. But the rest of the states, everywhere else, will slowly but surely take over their legislatures, or we'll have one of our activist judges get rid of that right in the state. And then the effort to get it reinstated will be nearly impossible, right? So we won't need a national abortion ban from the president. And so he'll be able to get reelected, and he won't even have to say, I'm going to sign a national abortion ban. That's not going to come up in their mind. He's not going to have to lie on their behalf because the job is done. He did it, right? He was, and it was bleeding Trump's support in some areas because they don't need to vote for him again, because no Democrat's going to be able to pass something if they think they've got Rand Paul there blocking access to anything, or any, I guess Ted Cruz, anybody who has a future in the Republican Party who thinks they're going to run on a pro-life ticket down the line can be the senator that stops the legislation that reinstates the rights that Roe v. Wade gave women. So they're counting on that. So Trump could come out and say, I'm not going to sign a national abortion ban and mean it, because it's never gonna. He's not gonna have to break that promise, because he's never gonna get a chance or there won't be a necessity of him doing that. And then Kansas and all these other states started passing bills to expand women's rights to choose in places they thought were safe. Now they need one. Now the religious right and the people who back Trump, and this is partly why J.D. Vance is part of the ticket as well, Heritage Foundation, all this crowd, now they do need Trump to pass a national ban. Now, he's not up on on current events in that regard. He's probably, they don't necessarily have him bought in on this. They probably think they can scare him into doing it, or promise him something, and he'll just do it. And then, you know, in his last act as president, and then fuck people. They'll kiss his ass forever. Even if somebody overturns it, he'll still get credit for it forever. So he'll sign it. But the idea is that they didn't have to. That's why he can say, that's why he's still having a debate about it, because he thinks and they may have even had conversations about this. They may have had a meeting with him going, look, once you knock off Roe v. Wade, you don't have to worry about it. You can do whatever you need to get reelected and say whatever you want. You can say you're for 15 weeks. It won't matter to us, because we won't need a national ban, and we'll make sure it does not come up to your to your desk to sign. You will never have to cross that line with us again. We got you. And then all these states started fixing it, and now he will have to do it. But they haven't had the second conversation with him yet, if that makes sense. Hopefully that clarifies where Trump is right now, because he's basically a year and a half behind the curve on this conversation.
Of course, that Kamala Harris has come out for taxpayer-funded abortion.
Sorry, Senator, but he's a voter in this case. The reason it matters,
I just wanted to finish this point.
Is he's a voter. Go ahead.
Well, of course it matters what his position is, and I'm sure that he's going to say what his position ultimately is, John. But I do think it's important to say that between Republicans and Democrats have talked about trying to defund Christian hospitals that don't do late-term abortions.
Why would Christian hospitals need funding from the federal government? If you're just a Christian hospital for Christians, what funding do you need from the federal government to run? And indeed, if you do need funding from the federal government to run, what makes you a quote-unquote Christian hospital? Do you not treat atheists? Do you not treat Muslims or Jews, Buddhists, Wiccans? If somebody rolls into the emergency room because you're a Christian hospital, do you deny them care? Or do you do the care anyways because you're a Christian hospital and you don't charge anybody? Which sounds pretty damn Christian to me. What funding?
Trump is trying to preserve some ability for the states to make these decisions. It is a very different approach to a highly contentious issue.
Yeah, it's a very different approach. His approach is no approach at all. You know, sometimes there's power in the abdication of power, you know.
I think what Donald Trump is trying to do is identify some common ground so that we can focus on the big...
Really? What's the common ground? I need more weeks. Is that I mean, talk about a landing pad. I mean, who among us cannot gather around a bonfire of I need more than that?
National questions like why can't Americans afford groceries and housing? That's what we're going to focus on when we win in November.
Why don't you focus on it now? I mean, you can bitch about it now, but why don't you focus on it now? How are you going to lower the cost of groceries? And don't say drill, baby, drill, unless you're going to explain how you're going to do that. Are you going to nationalize the oil companies and force them to drill? Or are you going to subsidize them so that they don't lose profits by overproducing? Those are your two main options. There might be another one. I don't know if you get somebody in, one of the heads of Exxon in a room and hit him with a fucking phone book. But the two mechanical ways that the federal government can raise oil production, which is subsidies or seizure, which one? You're going to flip a coin once you get in office? We'll decide after we win.
The former president, announced yesterday that he wants insurers or the government to pay for IVF. How?
Also, IVF is abortion. Just from their point of view, just so you know. you've got a bunch of eggs past conception. These are fertilized eggs that are frozen, and then you go through this process, and then once it works, or you give up on the procedure, all the other eggs that are left over are disposed of. And that is, if you believe life begins at conception, abortion. And not only is it abortion, it's abortion on a scale that dwarfs most women who have a single abortion because they became pregnant and didn't want to carry the baby to term, or it was an unviable fetus or something else, complications and the like. So, IVF, the average woman may or may not have an abortion in her life, but IVF is a guarantee of, at least 12 abortions, let's say. Because they have to try and fertilize the eggs, and then they're successful, and then they got to preserve them, and then they got to have an extra, and then more extra, and then they got to try and try again, and then again they throw them out after. That's abortion. That's aborting a baby after conception, to borrow their term.
Well, he's been consistent again in this, John, that he wants people to be able to afford to have families.
No. So he's for the child tax credit then, I guess. Oh, no, he's not. I see. And you are. That's the important thing. Oh, you're not. Oh. Well, your party is in general. You guys are just a couple of mavericks. Oh, they're not. So, well then, all right, maybe not child tax credit. Maybe that's that's like a tax break for the wrong people, and you're against it for fiscal and debt reasons. How about school lunches? That seems easy. When you got your kid at school, and, if you could take the burden of like 5 meals a week off your chest for, off your budget for, no, you're not for that either. What about pre-K? No, people should have to pay for before they enter the school system for any child care that should be an out-of-pocket. Okay. Sorry. Something about, I interrupted. You were talking about making it so that people can afford to have families.
And it's one of the reasons why we've supported an extended child tax credit that Donald Trump actually got
done.
He didn't just talk about it, he got it done.
No, he didn't.
He supported a whole host of policies to make it easier for women to choose life.
By the way, when he got it done, it was because the Democrats put it in as part of the bailout package during COVID.
To bring new life into the world. And this is just part and parcel of his broader view that if we want to have more families in this country, and I think all of us do, we have to empower young women and young families to make those choices and to have access to what they need.
Real quick, IVF is one of those things that's actually for slightly older parents. I mean, there are definitely young women, young couples that need it, but IVF is actually one of the things you kind of do later after you've tried everything else. It's often used, the oldest women to become parents, often IVF is the solution. Just saying.
You know this, John. I'm sure everybody who's watching has dealt with somebody, a friend or a family member who's struggling with infertility. It's a terrible, terrible problem that a lot of young families suffer in silence. I think all Donald Trump is saying is we want to help those families, make it easier for them to bring new families into the world.
How is he going to pay for it? Is this an expansion of Obamacare? Is this a mandate?
Yeah, the how, that's a gotcha.
Well, look, I think you have insurance companies that obviously are forced to cover a whole host of services. The president explicitly said that he wants insurers to cover additional fertility treatments. I think it's also important to point out that it's become way too expensive to raise a family.
Yeah, we're not there yet, dummy. We're not at raise a family. We're at make a family, dum-dum. And he's saying that insurers or the government will pay for IVF. That, for the record, is a guarantee of thousands of government-paid-for abortions. There is no way around it. If the government is paying for IVF, or it is subsidizing insurance companies, or it is forcing insurance companies to cover it, therefore having to offer them some incentive to do so, that is taxpayer money going to abortions. And on a scale that dwarfs almost anything Planned Parenthood would get funding for. Because again, you got 10 fertilized eggs at least that are getting kicked out. Unless I guess it's Octomom.
In this country, John, thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, a lot of young families feel like they don't have the ability to buy a home to raise a family in.
I see. So it's kind of like Mitt Romney's, self-deportation. That Kamala Harris is avoiding the IVF issue because nobody wants to have a kid because they can't afford them. The way they solve the IVF problem is nobody can afford to have a child. Again, this is just fucking like, look, both of these guys are like trying to, can I just close my eyes and go to my happy place? There's just nothing here. Nothing for me. I don't even know why I came to work this morning. I was thinking the exact same thing.
They can't afford groceries if they have additional children. You can't separate the pro-life issue from the fact that it's become way too expensive to afford a family thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, and that's the thing.
No. Okay. Nobody in this country, honestly, because of the social services that we have available, in this country, is making a choice about whether to have a kid based on whether they have enough food to go around. The two biggest expenses that have to do with people's decision to have a child, statistically speaking, across the board, is the cost of a home and childcare. Those two things. What am I going to do if I still have to work? So where are they going to go? I've already got two kids. They're just getting old enough where I don't need that anymore. And I'm just getting to the point where I can go to work and they're going to school. And now if I have to find a babysitter or something like that, that's an extra expense that I'm going to have to deal with. And we're stretched a little too thin if I'm going to make the life for these kids a little bit better, right? That's the primary one. And the other one is we need a bigger house if we're going to have another kid, right? That kind of idea. Until we don't. Until they move out or whatever. Those are the two. Nobody's going, Jesus Christ, eggs are expensive right now. I can't afford to have another kid because cereal is expensive. They're not doing it. At least no one is saying that except this asshole. If anybody is, it's not showing up in any of the polling about this stuff. So what do? First-time home buyers, $25,000 credit, like they tried in California and that they're trying in other places, making that a federal thing, helping people, with families and they got wrecked in 2008, buy another home if they lost their home and now they're, they've been renting this whole time. There should be almost like a bankruptcy, like a 7 to 10 year window. There's a lot of first-time home buyer things, but there's not a lot of second-time home buyers that have been renting for a long time, like second chance mortgages, as it were, which would be a great move for a lot of people, especially people who were wrecked during 2008. Just saying, in a Sparks administration, that would be one of our leading things, along with a first-time home buyer credit. You would also help people who have families who are trying to buy a home again after losing it because of 2008 or something like that and may have a hard time doing it, because there's a lot more of those folks than there are just people trying to move from an apartment to a house, especially during, in the age window of 18 to 25, for example. It's much older people, mid-30s to 40s. So supplying something like that would be a good idea. And then universal pre-K or some available subsidy for people below a certain income level for after-school programs or for childcare, something like that. That would answer it. That would make the people who are making optional abortions, like going, I can't afford to have another child, or disincentivized against having another child. That would open them up to it, right? Not because fucking Pop-Tarts are expensive.
That Donald Trump most wants to change.
How would this work if a state, and you believe that states should have the right to make these decisions, if a state bans IVF, but Donald Trump says he wants to guarantee and or pay for IVF for everyone who wants it, how would that work if a state banned it?
Well, John, I think it's such a ridiculous hypothetical.
Why? Alabama did exactly that.
Because Alabama, which is maybe the most conservative state in the entire union, has actively protected fertility access and fertility treatments.
Because they had to.
There's no state in the union, whether a right-wing state or a left-wing state, that I think is trying to ban access to fertility treatments. And if Alabama...
yet, first of all, the attempts at it have been tried multiple times. Do you think they're going to stop?
Alabama's protecting this stuff. I think it's safe to say the whole country is as well. So,
well, but the court,
look,
but there was a court.
I think that
Who's
what
to say
Donald
there's
Trump
not?
again wants to do
Who's to say that
is
there's not another
protect
court?
access.
Who's to say there's not another court in another state that could decide?
Wait, did you hear what he said at the tail end of that real quick? Listen to what he says, what Vance says.
Say that there's not another court.
Access.
Protect access. Hold on.
Well, so
well, but the court.
Look,
but there was a court.
I think that
who's
what
to say
Donald
there's
Trump
not?
again wants to do
Who's to say that
is
there's not another
protect
court?
access.
You hear that? I think what Donald Trump wants to do is protect access. Well, here's a good idea. How about a federal, we're going to pass a law that allows, it gives the right to IVF and fertility treatments to, on a federal level. That would protect access. That would stop any state from trying it. You wouldn't even have an Alabama judge that would try to shut it down because they couldn't, because there's federal protection for it. I'll tell you why. Because IVF involves abortion according to the purists, and he can't do that. So he can't protect access. You cannot say I'm here to protect access when you are saying I'll leave it up to the states. That's not protecting access. That's abdicating the responsibility for it. And we'll pay for it. You just have to move to another state. Then make the then we're having the conversation about how women are second-class citizens in our fucking country right now because they have to move to have the same rights as a man.
Who's to say there's not another court in another state that could decide that IVF should be banned? It happened in Alabama for a minute. You also voted against a measure in the Senate that would have guaranteed access to IVF around the country. So it's possible, right?
Well, two things, John. First of all, yes, a court made that decision in Alabama, and like the next second, the Alabama state legislature fixed that problem and ensured women had access to these fertility treatments. And all that I voted on, John, is for religious liberty. I don't want Christian hospitals or Christian charities to be forced to do something that they don't want to do. We have multiple...
They don't have to. As long as they don't get federal funds, they can do whatever the fuck they want. Don't take federal funds. And if you don't pay taxes, why are you getting federal funds? Shouldn't you sort of be in an ecosystem or an economy outside of the taxation system? I do remember something in the Bible about give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but let's put that aside for right now.
Republican measures that support fertility treatments, support IVF, but don't require Christian hospitals or other religious organizations to violate their conscience. I think all of us accept that we live in a big country with diversity of opinions. We want women to have access to this needed medical treatment. We also want to make sure that Christians...
Do we, though? Yeah, he's asking you, what if they don't want them to have access to it? What if somebody wants to institute Sharia law in Dearborn, Michigan? How about that? Are you cool with that? Are you all DEI about that too? Because I'm guessing not.
Organizations can live their conscience. I don't think there's any tension there or any conflict. And fundamentally, it's Democrats who are trying to force people to do things against their will. That is a way to inflame this topic instead of solving the problems for young families.
By the way, doing things against their will means paying your taxes, and that some of those taxes might be to support women who have IVF treatments, to pay for the bill that Donald Trump is suggesting he will be for. Yes.
Is it fair to say the details on IVF haven't been worked out yet, how either the government or insurers would be?
Dude, nothing about this campaign's details have been worked out yet. There aren't any details. You know what? Don't worry about it. Yeah, in 2 weeks, Donald Trump will have his health care plan out, and I'm sure it'll all be nailed down. Good Lord. By the way, you're watching How Sparks Make a Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show.
Be forced to pay it for it.
Well, John, of course, all details get worked out in the legislative process, and we're
not when your attitude is let the states solve it.
Not in the legislative process because we haven't won yet. But I think that President Trump, again, just believes that we want women to have access to these fertility treatments. He wants to make it more accessible, more affordable for more families.
Then why not pass a federal law protecting that right? You voted against it. Why, if he wants, all right, if Donald Trump if it's an important priority for him, work with me on this, dipshit. If Donald Trump wants to make IVF and the availability of IVF and other fertility treatments crucial treatments available to every woman in this country, and he wants to make it, open access to it, why the fuck would he put somebody on his ticket who voted against it? Why would he bring J.D. Vance on board if that's one of his biggest priorities? Vance voted against this. Vance voted against women having the right to IVF.
Because we believe in the Republican Party, and Donald Trump believes American families are the foundation of our country. They're the best thing about living in this great country. You have a lot of young women today who say they'd like to have more children, but for some reason, health or financial, they're not able to. We want to try to solve that problem because we want young women and young families to have the family life that they want and that they choose.
Yeah. So, but if they want it and they live in fucking Arkansas, they should probably move to New York State or California, just to guarantee that if they have to keep trying, that right will still be there, that during their IVF treatment, one of those states won't shut off the fucking spigot and file and have one of their right-wing judges file an injunction against a piece of legislation on the federal level that protects that right on the premise that it is taxpayer-funded abortion. Because that's what you're going to do. That's what's going to happen. And these motherfuckers, you remember Abbott and the whole, Texas filing lawsuits against Pennsylvania and Georgia about the elections, that these assholes think that other governors have standing to sue other states about what they're doing. So one state guarantees it next door to your state, and people start moving there. And so Abbott and these guys file a lawsuit against New Mexico or some other state and says, they've got to outlaw it too because they're killing babies. Because these eggs have a right to life. And there's no federal law, Trump is just, the referee will just leave the fucking ring. This is so lazy. I understand political speak, and I know when people are trying to be, on vague cleanup. But this is the exact opposite of what he's allegedly saying here.